I want to thank you all for coming. You're great sports. And I want to thank Cécile Chasson for providing a fabulous
Oh my
lunch.
gosh,
for
it
me.
was so good.
It was
Yeah.
good. What was your favorite?
Well, the tarts.
The blueberry tarts?
No, the
quiche.
The quiche. The quiche. I like the
I like the
blueberry.
salmon.
Was
Oh, did ya?
Salmon, yeah.
Would you like,
Crostini.
Earl?
Yeah.
All good.
It was all good,
What about you,
really.
Dave? What was your
I'd
favorite?
have to go along with Earl. I enjoyed everything,
Yeah.
including the quiche, which normally I don't eat much.
Is that
I
right?
think I was influenced by the old expression, real men don't eat
quiche.
quiche. But this one beat that out of
It
me.
was.
It's
Well, we
funny you
got
should say that. I kind of feel the same way about quiche. But that was good.
That was
I
good.
love quiche. I make it.
I love
Quite
quiche as
often.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've had a lovely lunch, and I think for the people who are going to be viewing this, I wonder if we could just all introduce each other a little bit. Dave, do you want to go first and
Sure.
tell us who you
I'm
are?
Dave Forgeron. I guess, a lifelong resident of West Ayrshire. Spent 35 years in the field of public education, and I've been retired for quite a few years, and I enjoyed my career in education, and I thoroughly enjoying the idea of being retired, and being able to travel and do the things I want to do
Yeah.
or don't want to do.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming. And Liz, what about you?
Well, I started early. Went to school in a one-room school. That was my first.
Your educational experience.
Yeah, and it was very hard because my mother and father didn't, never went to school. My his mother died when she was 7 years old, and all the older ones were gone, and she was left with a bunch of men that walked. She'd scrub the floor and they'd walk all over the floor. But my poor mother, when she used to tell me that. And, you know, it was very hard on her. She never went to school. She was not able to.
But you finished at the convent school here.
Yes,
Yeah.
I left school in Little Ants. I went all along in Little Ants after they built a new school.
Okay.
And then I went to convent school at in grade 11. I took my grade 11 in convent school.
And how many years have you lived on Isle Madame?
Well, I was in the States for about 12 years or so, and the rest of my time was on Isle Madame.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
Earl, why don't you tell us a bit about you?
Okay, I'm Earl Doyle. I was born in Rocky Bay, and I went to a one-room school in Rocky Bay, and the situation there is what I want to talk about today. I'm very interested in one-room schools, and because it seems to me when I look back on it, they did an awful lot of good. And it was a rudimentary situation where you got the 3 R's, you know, and that's what was required at the time when I was a youngster going to school. I started school in 1945. But anyway, I finished high school in Ayrshire, and that was 57. And then I went away on the Great Lakes and sailed for 4 years, trying to decide what I was going to do with myself. And then I ran into a mentor, Father J.J. McDonald, a great friend of mine for the rest of my life. He said, "Why are you sailing?" You know, so he took me to Antigonish to visit some of his friends that he had installed at St. Avex. And anyway, I said, well, this is just like high school. They're taking courses. That's what I was doing before. I can do that. But, you know, with no one to push you in that direction, no guidance, you know, that was quite an opening for me. And before I left there, I was in the registrar's office to come in September.
Signing yourself up.
Yeah, so anyway, then I was gone then, working and sailing, and then I come back and I started my teaching career in Scotia. And I was there for 2 years, but I just couldn't make enough money. My license was too low at the time, and and so I decided to go back to university. But I taught school in Ontario as well, St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, and then I went and took a job in the Valley and finished my career there. Yeah,
Alright.
but I was gone from here for 40 years before I came back here. So
Okay.
I know almost no one. You know, I have to use the old Cape Breton saying, "What's your father's name?" before I figure out who you are. You know, so you know, my brothers talk to me about this one or that one. I don't know what they're talking about.
So you came back to retire then? Or-
I came back to
Yeah,
retire.
okay.
And I built a place here, and I've been here ever since,
Right.
doing my thing.
And father?
Well, my name is John DeCoste, also known as Junior, because I had the same name as my father, so that's what they called me. And when I left home, I never told anyone that my name was Junior. I said my name is John. I reclaimed my name. But I grew up here in Ayrshire.
Yeah.
I did all my schooling here and so on, and got into all kinds of mischief with the police, and because of all kinds of things that we did that weren't very nice. And I ended up going to Teachers College. I went to Teachers College, and I did the 1 year course because I didn't want to stay too long at Teachers College in Truro, but I enjoyed it. And then I went teaching, and I taught 1 year in Coal Harbour. That I almost left teaching in Coal Harbour. It was so hard. But then a new school was opening here, and I got on here teaching 7, 8, and 9 certain subjects. And then the third year, I taught grade 4. And that put me back in the teaching mode. The grade 4s were just super. They were great.
They still like school? And
Yeah, oh, God, they're so... And I had 2 cousins of mine in the class. Yeah. One of my uncle's children and one of my aunts. And so during that year, I had thought about it before, but during that year, I made up my mind that I would go and be a missionary. So that's how I became a priest. I didn't become a priest here. You see, I went to the Missionaries of Africa, also known as the White Fathers of Africa, in the United States. And I did 5-year studies with them there. And then it was like, it's almost as if you had to study forever. Because I did those 5 years, and I still had 4 years to do. And so I went to Ottawa, and from Ottawa I went to England, and from England I went to Africa for what they called a stage, you know, an experience. And then when I came back home, I didn't go back to England, I came back to Ottawa. Because I belonged to the Ottawa province, to the Canadian province, and I didn't know them because I had been away so much. And so I finished in Ottawa. I was ordained in 75, and I have been a missionary of Africa. Well, I was a missionary of Africa for 30 years, but I got caught in the Rwanda-Congo crisis, and I had to try and get students out and myself out, and it was quite a horrendous experience, but I went through it and I did it. I finally came back to Canada and worked in Ottawa for a good while, and I loved Ottawa. And then at one point when the work, because I was a chaplain in Ottawa, a hospital chaplain, for the longest while, and I also had a parish. Well, when those 2 things finished, I went to see the bishop, because by that time it was Prendergast who had been in Halifax. And I said to him, I said, I'm finished with that work. He said, yeah, okay. I said, can I go home? He said, yeah, you can go home. So I came to Halifax because I didn't have any family left here, you see. And so I went to Halifax, and I was in St. Ignatius Parish for 8 years. And in my 8th year, and I was with Father Cosgrove, who started Chalice. So I was a very big help for him, because if he needed to go to Africa or somewhere else in the world, I was there to take up the reins for him, you see. So at one point, I went in to visit my sister, who was staying with her daughter, and she said, did you know that there's no priest in Almaden? Well, I said, there was. Well, she said, there isn't any now. Oh. So I saw Father Cosgrove, and I said, maybe I should do something. So I contacted the bishop, Bishop of Antigonish, and it's the one who's there now, Kirkpatrick.
Yeah.
Well, he said, maybe we could meet, because he said, I don't know you. So I went to see him. And we discussed different things, and I told him, I said, now, listen, you have to realize I speak French and English and Acadian. There's nothing they can say in front of me I'm not going to understand. So the following week he called me, he said, it's there and it's yours if you want it.
And so here you are.
So here I am, I came back.
All right.
But I had been gone 56 years when I came back.
Wow.
So
Wow.
there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
But
glad
I
you
enjoyed
came
every
back.
minute of it.
Yes, we're all very glad that you came back. Well, I think today what we're going to talk about is, the topic broadly is education. And I don't know, maybe a good place to start is that, all of us, when we're young, we spend a great deal of time with our families. But the second sort of institution or organization that we spend the most time with is school.
Yeah, that's right.
And maybe a place to start would be, what is something that stands out for you about your early school days?
Well, my early school days I was like alone. I was an only child, naturally, although my parents adopted when I was 11 years old, which I wanted siblings so bad that my uncle came to visit one morning, my father's brother, and he said, I went for water in the well. We had the well at our house. He says, I went to get some water this morning and I found a little baby girl.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And that's the way I was brought up.
Wow.
And I was so mad that my father didn't get up early enough to go to the well
Right.
to find this little baby girl, because I used to cry all the time. I was alone.
Yeah, yeah.
And I still have tears in my eyes when
So
when we talk.
Liz, when you say you were alone, and so starting school, you didn't have older siblings who would have told you what to expect? Or...
No,
So
I-
do you remember, were you frightened or excited
I
when you
was-
started school?
I was very frightened because I didn't have anybody to help me.
Right. Right.
My
Now,
mother didn't know how to speak, barely a little English maybe, and she never went to school because she was 7 years old when her mother died, and she had to take over the house with mostly men. All her older sisters were in Canso, like the one in Antigonish, in Boston, had left to go to Canso to her aunt who had the bakery. They had owned the bakery in Canso. So she ended up in Boston. I don't know how. And then Aunt Margaret was the second oldest, and she did go to Canso because they had an aunt in Canso. I don't know on what side she was related to, and or her husband was related to. Her husband was a LeBlanc from
right.
here, and so they left home, and there were three women. The one who was in Boston, the one who was two was in Canso, Aunt Alma and Aunt Margaret, but they were older.
But your family stayed here.
These were my mother's sisters.
Right. But I guess my question is, my understanding was you attended the one-room school.
Right,
house,
but
your
I
little
didn't.
aunts.
Yeah, I didn't have any relatives that were older that stayed
Right.
to help me.
So it was you didn't know what to expect. You
I
didn't
didn't
know
know.
anything. Right.
I was 7 years old.
Right.
They weren't allowed to go to school before you were 7.
Okay. Was that
So-
true for you too, Dave? Were you-
I started school in the early 50s, and I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
And when I was 5, they were taking them at 5, but there was a cutoff, and they had too many students, so
Right.
I had to stay home for a year. So I started school at the age of 6, And the school was what is currently the Acadiaville Community Center. And if I was to use my pretty good memory, where I was seated that first year, it would be probably in the kitchen of that facility.
Right.
There were 4 classrooms. The primary and probably grade 1 was on the roadside. The other one was on the Lavandia side of the building. And as you got up into the grades, you moved upstairs. There were 2 classrooms at the upper level. But if you were to ask me what really stood out, school experiences, is when IMDH, Almadam District High School, opened in '63. For the first time in my life, I had seen science labs, chemistry lab, physics lab, biology lab, gymnasium. We had none of those things. I did from primary to grade 11. My studies were in West Ayrshire. Started off at the current Acadiaville Center. Then they built a new school across the street from where we lived, and it burned after I had moved on. But I went to IMDH as a grade 12 student. You were teaching at the time on the staff,
Yeah.
and I was the first elected student council president.
Oh, my God.
And there were all kinds of people we didn't know because they came from all over,
Yeah, that's
Camp
right.
Road, Lewisdale.
Of course.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I remember that very, very well. And there was a Samson fellow from the north side. His family had just moved back from Halifax. And I think he might have been a grade 11 student.
Yeah.
And we'd go in the gym with a basketball. He could play basketball. No, he could, he had
Yeah.
the moves.
Yeah.
He probably wasn't very good, but compared to us, he was
Of
like
course.
Michael
Excellent.
It
Jordan.
was way better.
What about you, Earl? What,
Well, I started my, I was 7 years old when I went to started school in Rocky Bay.
like Liz?
Yeah.
Yeah, and anyway, that went from there, and the kinds of things that we learned there, you know, were of a great value to society at that time, because there were lots of people who were completely illiterate. You know, they couldn't read, they couldn't write, but for their way of living, they knew everything about what they had to do to live. But when it come to academic stuff, they just didn't have that, you know. So anyway, I went through that till November of grade 9, and we moved away at that time temporarily. My mother was ill, and we had to move away, and then I went to DeCoste, and then when I got there, there was a nun that was teaching, and she had I think it was 7, 8, 9, I think, and 10, and I think there was even an 11.
In one classroom?
In one classroom, yeah. So anyway, I stayed there and finished grade 10 there. And then by that time, they had people hired with kind of like taxis to bring you from Rocky Bay or DeCoste or whatever to come into the convent school in Ayrshire.
Now, did you pay for that service, Earl? It was okay.
No, but I fitted right into that, because prior to that, anybody who went to high school from these other areas, they had to board in Ayrshire or St. Peter's, wherever they were going to go. You know. So anyway, I fitted right into that. So I stayed in Ayrshire for grade 11 and 12, and it was like you were saying, that one teacher was expected to do everything, you know, which was an impossibility for high school, just an impossibility. So it never worked out that we had good courses there. You know, we had courses like agriculture. You know, we had a man from St. Peter's come in and teach a correspondence course, and he would show up once in a while, and we'd do papers for that and submit it to him, and that was a course that was accepted like for grade 12 as one of the courses. Then we had another course like handicrafts, you know, making wallets and all this kind of stuff, which was all very nice. But I didn't know the difference. We never had any guidance. When you got the same effects with this kind of a transcript, you had nothing, you know. So my first year at St. F.X., it was all prep courses that I was taking and things that I should have had that I didn't have. So I was only able to take 2 academic courses. The first year was the St. FX, plus a whole bunch of prep courses. So that set me up there.
Right.
And then I found a girlfriend in Antigonish when I was there, and she was in nursing, and then I decided I'd go to teachers college, and Father John and I were in the same class, like we already talked about.
That's right.
You know, and
And I knew his wife because
Yeah.
her sister was at teachers college as well.
yeah,
Rose's sister, and we were very good friends.
yeah. So we did that, and then since the girlfriend, she had another year to go, you know, to finish her RN. So at St. Martha's, so I said, well, I might as well not teach, you know, because it was it lasted a 1-year programs. So anyway, I come back to St. FX for another year. So when I come out of that, I started to teach in the schools. And the school, excuse me, it wasn't ready. It was being all changed over by a contractor from Louisdale.
So they were renovating the
They
school?
were renovating the school. So anyway, the school in Pullamong, the old school in Pullamong, was in use temporarily. And we had 2 nuns teaching there, and myself, and another lady. And then we're occupying the Martinique School as a separate building again. And that stayed that way. So about November that year, excuse me, we, the teaching principal, the nun, she had a grade 5 and 6 class, and she decided to take a nervous breakdown. On the weekend, we were moving back to the Scoofs, to the new renovated building. So anyway, I got a call from the secretary of the municipal school board here, wanted to know if I would take over. Well, I guess I might as well. I'm into this now. So I not only did that, but we had to do the move on a weekend. And the thing is, I also was supposed to take over the chairman of the home and school. So it was a baptism by fire, and then teach a double grade.
Wow,
Yeah, so I did that, and did that for 2 years.
wow.
And then I just wish that I was making enough money because I only had half a degree. So the idea was to go back to sea and get some money and come back to St. FX again.
And you did that?
And I did that.
You did
Yeah, and you know, and I thoroughly enjoyed teaching,
Right.
right to the end.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And, Father DeCoste.
Well, I never went to a one-room school. When I started school here in Ayrshire, I must have been maybe about 7. It was what was called the Ayrshire Academy, and there were 4 classrooms, 2 downstairs and 2 upstairs.
So that was the same setup in
Yes.
West Ayrshire, right?
And I didn't only have sisters. I had one sister only at that time, Mother Josephine, and she was a tyrant, trust me. My first strap that I got in grade 1 was from her.
Yeah, they used to strap at the one of those
listen.
days.
They did.
Listen,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
hated the academy. It was a dump, a total dump. The toilets, the doors wouldn't close properly, and the older guys would come and if you were in there, they'd open the door, you know, and call the sister to come and see there was something wrong with the toilet and you were sitting on it. You know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I just hated it. So I was there until grade 7. But I had other sisters teaching, Mother Mathilde from West Ayrshire, and Mother, there was one that I had when I was in grade like 7. Well, what's her name? She was here for years. Sister, anyway, she died not long ago. And we used to have these tests for the Acadian schools. And if you got the best mark on the test, you went for a trip around the province with the inspector of schools.
Wow.
So I won that 1 year that I was in grade 7. I won the test. And there were 5 of us, and we went all around the province with the inspector of schools. It was Inspector Chesson at the time.
Remy Chesson.
Remy Chesson.
Oh, yes.
We had a
Used to-
grand time.
used to be inspector when I was
And
a
we
kid.
stayed with families, along the way.
Okay.
Oh my God, it was great, But then you see, and in grade 8, for the first time, I had a man teacher. I had Norman Samson. And I just enjoyed it. He was such
you
a
know
good
But
teacher.
he was a cousin
Yeah.
of mine.
Okay.
But I was too old for that.
There you go. There you go. And so Norman, after Norman, see, that was grade 8. So after grade 8, I went to the convent school. I was totally happy at the convent school. It was a totally different situation. But I never had, I was never in a situation where we had one teacher for many grades. That didn't happen to me. By grade 11, I did in Halifax. I stayed with my sister because my mother had been very sick, and so I went to Halifax to be with my sister. And I always had enough teachers for the different courses, And in grade 12, we had, most of them were sisters, and we had about 5 or 6 teachers teaching us biology, the whole works, like math, and they were sisters.
And that was in Halifax.
No. The Halifax, I just went for 1 year.
Oh, okay.
And
Sorry.
then came back. Because I was in a school in Fairview, and it was just from 9 to 12, and we were 1,500 students. Well, I was from a 13,
Wow.
a school with only 13 people in grade. I mean, I was lost. I
Right.
was totally lost. But I did it, and I got to grade 11 just the same.
Right.
And then came back for grade 12 and got through it. And I decided to go to teacher's college
Right.
because we needed the money in the family and so on. And my father was the only one working and so on. And so I did that. But during my school days, I worked part-time at the post office. And I enjoyed that immensely. I went in there one day, and Mildred Ducharme, who was the woman that was there as postmistress, because we'd get our mail. We didn't have a box. We couldn't afford a mailbox. We'd get our mail at the wicket. She said to me, she said, "How old are you?" I said, "I'm 14. I'm going to be going into grade 10." She said, "Oh, that's great." She said, "Would you like to work here?" I didn't say that.
Never had that
I didn't scream or anything, but I said, "Of course."
Yeah.
Big time. Well, she said you could work here part-time, after school, and on Saturdays.
Wow.
So I did
That was
that, and I enjoyed every minute of it. So-
Now, did any of you work while you were in
Well,
school?
no,
No,
Just
no,
went to
there was
school?
no,
Just-
no, yeah, and,
Yeah.
and
just in the summers.
I
Yeah.
was in the one class, and in the afternoon, we had to split the class because there was too many people, too many kids going to school at one, in Little Ants.
Yeah, of course. of
And
course.
so we had to split the classes. I was in a low class, and somebody else that was older were in the, like Raymond Clenn, and
Yes.
he was very smart. He was in the higher, higher.
So the younger kids went to school sort of during the morning?
In the morning,
And
and
the
the older kids went in the afternoon. Yeah,
afternoon,
yeah.
huh.
See,
It
we
wasn't
never
too
had that
big.
kind of a situation here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That
we
didn't
had,
happen, you know.
Now, was
No.
the same, would this have been the same teacher, Liz, like in
Same
the morning
teacher.
and the
Yeah.
afternoon?
Same teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's,
Yeah.
and so that would have been a lot, like a one-room school, but still a
A
lot
one-
of kids.
A one-room school, and we had a stove. There was somebody putting
Yeah.
wood
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
stove
Of course.
all day long.
Now, Dave, your school in West Arishat, did I get this right? It had 4 classrooms?
4 classrooms, the first school, and then when we moved into the new school, it was 4 classrooms, and eventually they built 2 more rooms in the basement.
Yeah. I
But
remember
it was
the new
only a
school.
4,
Yeah.
and whoever taught you in grade 2 or grade 4 or grade 5 or 6, that teacher would teach you all day programs.
Oh, so all
Yeah.
the way through,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right now?
Until when I hit grade 11, we ended up with 3 teachers. One taught science, great fella. There was no lab, there was no equipment, but he would make contraptions at home.
Well, good, eh?
The electrolysis, he had gotten a car battery and he set everything up, so we did learn a lot of science from this guy.
That's
And
good.
he had no science background, he must have worked
Wow.
awfully hard.
Hard.
Wow.
And then we had one more person doing social studies.
Yeah.
And we used to get a little magazine or pamphlet called Canada and the World. And he subscribed for the class. My grade level, we were maybe 6. And every Friday afternoon, we'd do current events and world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I developed from that experience a tremendous taste for what goes on in the world. And I'm
Oh,
still the
yeah, for
same.
sure.
And now with technology, I tape CBC
Yeah.
News. While I'm watching CTV, and then I watch the other ones. I'm a news hound, and I like to study the backgrounds of those events.
Yeah. For
And it
sure.
all started, that guy planted a seed,
Yeah.
and then we had a nun teaching the rest of the courses.
All the rest of
And-
the courses.
and she ended up motivating me because she told me one day that I would never do really well in math. And we
You were going
wrote,
to prove her wrong.
we wrote provincials,
Yeah.
and I creamed the algebra and geometry.
Well, good.
I couldn't wait to show it to her
Well,
because I knew I wouldn't get her anymore because the next year we were moving to Almadam District 9.
okay. Okay.
So I let her know that yes, I could do it.
Oh my God.
So and one thing I forgot to mention the first time we came around is my first week in school, I was reprimanded a couple of times because the roads weren't paved. And in early September and in the spring, the graders would go by
Yeah.
to try to level off the
Yeah.
Of
potholes.
course.
Yeah.
And I'd get up and watch. I was always intrigued with heavy machinery.
Yeah.
And even with cars, because when I was 5, 6 years old, you didn't see a car going by every 2 minutes.
No, exactly. That's so true.
Yeah.
Oh my
The
God.
world, the world has changed so much everywhere,
Yeah.
but in Almadam even more so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what did you get in trouble for?
For getting up during class to watch the grader.
Oh, right. Okay.
Of course, that would do
Distraction.
it.
I'm
Oh my
surprised
God.
every kid in the class wasn't plastered to the
Well, I
window.
was probably the tallest. I was the only one who could see outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It,
For
it
sure.
was rough when,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
in my time.
To go to
I mean,
school?
Oh well, yeah, of course. it
What
would
did you
be.
find? What did you find the roughest, Liz, about
Well,
going to school?
it was hard to. The teachers had no chance of teaching you anything. I didn't.
Yeah.
I did,
Well, there
I
was
wasn't
too much.
taught. Yeah,
There were too many.
I mean,
Well, it was a difficult circumstance with so
Yeah.
many grades and one person responsible for everything.
right. So you didn't get anything. Then they did build a new school, but that was only two rooms.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was the young crowd, the young kids, and then the old kids in the other school.
Right.
And I didn't go any further than that in a big school.
Right.
I did get my grade 10 earlier, but when I went to convent school, my mother says, "You're going to convent school."
Right. Now, you must have found a big difference then going to the convent
yes.
school.
But it was rough with the nuns. They were very strict.
Yeah, they weren't the easiest either.
Oh
that's
my
true.
God! I was caught one night sitting at the window. Now this is at 8:00. We had to be in bed.
Yeah.
We had to go to our bed,
Of course.
and I was caught looking out the window and waving to the people that used to be going to dances,
Yeah.
especially on a Saturday night. They used to go to dances, and I used to love going and sing.
Yeah.
So, and I waited, and she caught me. She came out of her cube,
Oh.
and she punished me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Now, she
And-
punished you because you were supposed to be in bed sleeping,
Yeah,
or
well, whether sleeping, because I was up sitting at the window,
oh, okay.
Yeah.
and a cubicle was
course.
there. I don't know if somebody told her, but she was watching me. She was pretty mean.
Ah.
And I remember when I was, after I got out of school, I was living in Boston. I came down from Boston, and they were retired, and they were at the mother house in
Oh, okay. Yeah, New Brunswick.
New Brunswick?
Was it New Brunswick?
Elmwood
Yeah.
Drive in
Yeah.
Moncton.
Elmwood Drive, that's right.
Yeah, and so I stopped to see her. I stopped to see her, and I
that's
asked
nice.
her, and sat down, and she goes, "Hi." And when I sat down, I said, "You know, you were very mean."
And what did she say?
She says, "Yes, I know I was."
It was the same thing with Mother Josephine with me. When she came back here and she had changed so much,
Yeah.
well, I said, you know, we didn't like you much when you were here the first time.
Oh yeah.
And I told her why.
But
No.
getting
had
back
punished
to
me.
how things have changed, I went to St. FX in September 1964, and I was 18. A lot of guys were older,
Yeah.
but we had to be in bed at 11:15. I was in residence, the first year residence.
Oh, my God.
You had to be in bed at 11:15,
Yeah, only the-
and they had prefects checking every room.
Oh, my God.
And no co-educational residences at that
None
time.
at all.
No.
Forget it.
Nothing.
The lights in the room went off.
Yeah,
at 11,
exactly.
And the hallway and the bathrooms, bathrooms on one or the other. I lived in Mockler 2 years, Mockler Hall. And the thing is, you could get out there, and I remember, studying before a test, sitting on the floor by your door,
Yeah, of course.
getting the
To
lights.
catch the lights?
You catch the lights.
I remember doing that in the washrooms.
Yeah.
You know, that was always
course.
like the washrooms.
It's terrible.
Absolutely.
If you had an assignment to pass in and you hadn't completed it, you'd go in the washroom after hours and by the light, and if somebody came in, they'd forgive you because they knew you were up for good reason.
So this is an educational environment from the university on down
Yeah.
that put a big premium on discipline.
Yes,
Oh
Well,
yeah.
St. FX would.
heavy duty.
Right,
Yeah.
of course, of course.
But
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 it was at the time. It was generally accepted. Nobody really complained.
No, nobody
No.
questioned it.
No,
Yeah.
this is the way
That's
it is
true.
here. That's the way.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
they couldn't get away with that anymore. No.
No, God, no.
Punishment
Against
Forget
your
it.
rights.
Or
Yeah.
Yeah.
Forget
And
it.
if a girl was in the men's residence, the thing is, you could be sent home,
Yeah.
and she could be banned from being around there, whatever.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, there was
And
a
even
lot of
if
that
you-
kind of stuff.
Even if you were of drinking age, you weren't allowed to drink
yeah.
No,
at all.
I
No,
know,
of course
I
not.
know.
Right.
of course
But
not.
nonetheless, I mean, despite this world or climate, I mean, it sounds a bit claustrophobic, right? From where we sit now.
Yeah.
But you still found teachers, Dave, that inspired you.
Yes.
And what about you, Earl? Were you inspired by anybody?
Well, I didn't feel that the formation of the teachers here for high school was adequate at all, and I don't, condemn the teachers. It wasn't their fault. It's just that I didn't feel they were ready. It was impossible to teach good academic classes and subjects, one person in a high school setting.
All right.
So as a result of that, we got a bad go at it.
Right.
Yeah,
And
it-
Father,
it-
would you agree with that?
Not totally,
Okay.
because the teachers that I had, the sisters I had, were very good. They were excellent teachers, and I had quite a few of them because for grade 12, I had at least 5. One teaching math, one teaching biology, and what's her name, who was formerly from Whiteside, Pauline White. I learned more English from her than from any teacher that I had in
So
the
I guess-
past or ever.
So I guess it depended then on the resources
Of
available
course,
to the
of
school.
course, of course.
And
And
Yeah.
then there was a sister teaching math. She was excellent.
Yeah.
She was excellent.
I had the advantage of being younger than these guys.
Yeah,
right.
that's right.
So that was a bit different.
Oh, yes, when, like I mentioned earlier about having some grade 11 teachers who were really good, but when I ended up at Almadam in grade 12, I had one teacher for every subject, and all of them were really qualified to teach what they were teaching.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember English, at that time there was English A and English B. One was literature and the other
Yeah.
one was composition.
That's right.
And we even had 2 separate teachers,
Yeah.
one for literature, Vinod Francis from
Oh my
the
gosh,
north
yes,
side.
that's right.
And then we had Claire DeGoux from St. Peter's.
Well, they were very qualified
Yeah,
teachers.
and I became a teacher, I would say primarily because of Paul Beckerdax.
Oh, yeah.
He taught me history, and he was
Yeah.
so interesting and
Yeah.
so knowledgeable. And at the time, there was a course called Modern World Problems, which today would be called Modern History.
Yeah.
And Keith Scurry taught that course. And Keith said his ways, but he was very knowledgeable and very interesting. And I'd say these two social studies people are what directed me to be a teacher, because when I started grade 12, I was considering law as a possible career. And that leads to a little story I'm going to tell you about that. One day I was watching a newscast, and this lawyer, I think he was from Toronto, defending Jerry Regan, who was charged
Oh,
with,
yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
right.
yeah.
and they had to give him something like $1 million to retain him right off the.
You thought that was pretty good.
Oh, it was worth that $1 million for it. For Regan, I guess. But in any case, what happened is the next day I was in school and I was saying, I thought at one point of becoming a lawyer. I'm sure I would not have been as good as Greenspan, that was the guy's name. But I probably would have been okay in a courtroom. And one of the teachers, she retired, a lady here on the island, she said, Dave, I don't doubt that you would have been a good lawyer. But she said, it's a heck of a lot easier for you to look at your face in the morning when you shave than if you were successful in getting bad guys off the hook.
Yeah, there you go.
I thought that was fantastic.
I'm telling
Yeah.
you, she hit the nail on the head. Big time.
Liz, you must have had the odd good memory from school. I mean,
Well, yeah, we, the fact was that we were all the girls that were staying at the convent were staying there, but there was grade 9 on the different grades. So you didn't get a teacher that would definitely be with you to teach you, or we had to learn at different points. I was in grade 11. Some people were with me were in grade 9.
right.
So there was not a teaching. We didn't get taught different subjects.
Right.
All right.
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 You know?
But you must have had quite a community. Did you, like among your fellow, like do you remember the girls forming a close community?
Oh yeah, were girls from Canso, Sydney, all over the place.
Yeah, that's right.
And
that's
did you
right.
become good friends?
Oh yes, we had good friends. I mean, some of them. Well, that's where I met Nita.
Right.
Nita and I sat together.
At school.
We were in grade 11 also. But there was a lot of people, and the nuns at that time didn't teach what you were studying. Like, you were studying from grade 9 to grade 11. So it was hard to,
Yeah.
What did you do for fun at the convent?
while they taught us, like, I did something on the loom.
Okay.
It taught us different things, and I made a beautiful pillow while I was there, and things like that. They taught things like that,
So practical
practical
things. And again, for fun, like did you have time off where you would? Did you go for picnics or
Oh,
swimming?
no, they didn't take us. They took us for walks.
Okay.
Oh yeah, the boarders. The boarders from the convent. We'd see them every day walking.
Yeah,
They'd walk to the head of the harbor and back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we
That was
did
a
a lot of
phys ed
walks and things
The
like
phys ed
Yeah.
program.
For that program.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to what they were learning.
And it was a very different experience than what you had.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, very
She's
different.
way older than we are.
Oh, yes, I'm way older than all of you. But the thing was that, and they were strict,
Oh, apparently.
Of
very
course.
strict.
Of
You
course.
couldn't talk.
Listen,
Wait.
there were boarders that would come. They were put there by their parents because they were not easy.
Yeah.
Not easy cookies
Not
at home.
easy.
So they were there was kind of
I'm
a,
sure, yeah.
to make them, fess up, and so on.
Right.
Because I remember her so well, and she tried, I don't know how many times to run away from
Yeah.
the convent.
Yeah.
Now, were there day students at the convent too, or was
Oh,
it?
yes.
Oh, yes,
Oh,
yes,
yes.
We were day
grade-
students, you see.
Yeah.
we were day
Grade
students.
10 or grade 9 or grade 10 who some people stayed, they were local
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they say, but the ones that came from
away.
away
Oh, yeah.
stayed at the
But
convent
it's true,
and
they were from
taught.
everywhere.
Huh?
They were from everywhere.
Everywhere.
Sydney, Bear Head, and,
Yeah.
and Escazoni.
Right.
And
A lot
You-
of native girls for
the
there.
native girls weren't allowed to speak their language
No.
because nobody understood them. So you'd get into the washroom and they were speaking their language in the washroom,
Yeah.
you see,
Right.
to
And
one
if you
another.
got caught doing
Yeah,
things that
yeah.
you weren't, well, you got, I'm telling you.
Well, what kind
I
of
was-
what kind of discipline did you experience? If you did something you
Discipline,
weren't supposed to do,
I'll
what
tell
happened?
you, I was pretty good, but when she caught me sitting at the table at
the
the
window.
window, she gave me a job of cleaning the bathroom, the toilet. That's what my job was
Right.
for months.
It's too bad
For
she never
months.
had you cleaning in the window. You could see better.
I know, but she wouldn't do that. Oh yeah, she was she was nasty,
Yeah, of
and I
course.
told her she was nasty.
No, but would the experiences of people who were staying at the convent, would they be very different from students who were going there just for the day?
Oh, the ones that
Oh my
went
gosh,
there
yes.
for the day, they didn't bother with them.
No.
Ah,
No,
okay.
it was just
Yeah,
school.
it's just the ones that stayed at the school. We
we
were
had
taught
no-
different
we
good
didn't have much
things.
contact with the borders. They were called the borders,
Yeah.
We didn't have much contact with the
Yeah.
borders.
Actually, when you mention about speaking their Mi'kmaq
Yeah,
language,
yeah.
I met a lady who ended up earning a PhD in some significant American university, and I couldn't help myself but ask her, she had mentioned to me that she had gone to OLA Convent.
Oh,
Yeah.
you see, oh yes, there were many.
And so I said, were you abused or mistreated because you were Mi'kmaq? And she said, it would be popular for me to say yes, but no, I wasn't. So I was pleased to hear that.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't. notice
Well,
any
you know,
problem.
when we could understand and we could see, they were treating the borders the same,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
pretty much.
yeah.
They were mean to everybody.
Yeah.
You know,
The meanest involved, and even the day students,
Right.
because I got.
What
We didn't get the strap in high school, but
Yeah,
almost.
Yeah,
Mother Immaculata was not pleased with me. Trust
Oh,
me.
yeah.
yeah.
It was Mother Immaculata. She did, but she taught all of grade 11,
Yeah.
and then she went and taught all of grade 12 the next year. So I had her for 2 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
But she had 11 in one room, and we moved to another room, but she was the teacher for everything. But
We,
a story is coming to mind now that I must get out. It's bothering me, and I must tell it. You know, I suppose I was probably one of the older ones in the class. And anyway, Mother Superior, when she wanted something down at Lebrun's store that was
yeah.
heavy, she would have me take the horse and the main wagon and go down and get it. And so I got half a day out of school to take that horse.
You made sure that you did the half a day.
So I do that, but she trusted me to do that.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
was awful pleased that she had someone to send, but she had someone there working there because they had cattle and so on.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they had a bit of a farm going, you know, and
Right.
they
Well,
had-
my Uncle Joe worked for years for
Well,
them.
I guess it was Joe.
Yeah, Joe David. You worked for
I
years
used
with
to go and visit him, you know, at
Yeah.
noontime down in the barns.
That's right,
sometimes.
that's right. Yeah.
So the convent must have had this as a way then of generating produce for their own use.
Yes.
Oh my
Right.
gosh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
They had
they
a
did.
farm
Now,
and
see, we
yeah.
didn't, I didn't live there.
Yeah.
Right.
With
Yeah.
a farm or
Yeah.
or anything like
Well,
like that. There
every
was
year we went to
nothing-
help the sisters gather the carrots and the potatoes from their
yeah,
fields.
I know in your years they used to have that, but
That's
in
right.
my time
No,
they
no,
didn't have
no,
any of that stuff.
Oh, so okay. So but Well, so where was the farm in relation
Yeah.
to the convent?
It was around the land around the convent,
Okay.
and then on the other side where the old cemetery is, up back.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, they didn't have that
The hall,
when
the,
I was
the parish hall now is the newer barn. There
That's
was a-
right.
There was an older
It
barn.
was the
there.
barn, yeah.
Yeah.
It was an older barn. They
Yeah.
tore that off and they put that newer barn, and that was
That's right.
renovated.
Now it's the OLA Parish Center.
Yeah.
Right, right, right.
Now, the barn, I don't know if the barn is there, the priests used to live right next to the convent.
Well, yeah, but
It
there was a
always-
rectory. There was a big rectory. there.
Right.
Yes,
And
it was two separate
a
buildings.
couple of
It was two
times
separate
we went
buildings.
to
There was a
the,
little thing connecting them,
Yeah.
but that was
Passageway, yeah.
But that house that the priest lived in was hauled there.
yeah.
And
Oh,
it-
from somewhere else.
From somewhere else. And then it was attached by just a. you
Yeah,
know,
there was a kind of
breezeway or-
Yeah.
yeah,
And
I think you could go into the basement through there or something.
No, you could go into the convent back.
Yeah,
there.
that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
yeah.
So I guess I'm curious about what's a good memory from school. Now, Dave, you've talked about a few, people who inspired you and your interest in current events and the science teacher who brought wonderful contraptions from home. I mean, was Dave's experience unusual?
No, not
Unusual
really.
for
It
me.
depended on the
For you.
school.
Was it-
Yeah,
And on the
because
teacher.
Because we
it's
didn't
the era
have,
that I
Yeah, that's
finished
right.
off high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things have certainly changed.
Oh,
You came after me.
Because I had lovely experiences even at the academy that I hated so much
Yeah.
because of the artwork they had
Okay.
and so on, stuff like that. And I loved art.
Yeah.
yeah.
And stuff like that, and the compositions they'd give us to do and so on, and I enjoyed that. And it's the sisters that encouraged me to go into teaching.
See, there was nothing like that.
No,
You
Right.
know,
No,
we
there
didn't
wouldn't have been.
learn
Yeah.
anything like that. We would learn like on the loom,
yeah,
things that they
yeah,
had
yeah.
there.
But see, they didn't have that anymore
Yeah.
by the time we got there.
But did you find any? You must have found some of that useful.
Oh
as
yes,
you go-
I enjoyed it. I still have on the loom. I made a set of dishcloths,
Oh my.
little cloths, and I still have them.
Well,
Wow.
there you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go.
Now, so do you have a large loom or a small one?
We had a good size loom.
Okay.
Yeah, a good size.
I think I remember that.
Is that right? Yeah.
So I guess the girls at the school were really being trained to be at the time what would have been considered to be a useful housewife.
Exactly.
Right.
We didn't get things like what you
Science
taught
or
science
math
or
or-
anything like that. There was nobody teaching anything like that.
Right.
We had no nuns teaching you different things like to learn.
history
Well,
Yeah.
or-
You know, there was always a curriculum that could have been followed, just weren't doing it in that case.
they
Yeah.
weren't qualified to do it or trained.
Yeah.
I have to say that the opening of Almadam District High School totally changed the landscape.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
big
All
time.
the teachers were qualified to
Yeah,
teach
that's right.
Different
subjects
things.
they were assigned
That's right.
to.
That's right.
The first graduating class, of which I was a member, I think 12 or 14 or 16 of us went to study in university,
Yeah.
which had never been seen that many kids from
No,
Almadam
no, no,
Yeah.
no,
going to
never.
university.
Yeah.
And it kept growing and growing and growing.
Yeah.
And while I was at the school as an administrator, we had 16 of our kids who became medical doctors.
See?
We
Yeah.
have
Oh, yeah.
umpteen people who became engineers and school teachers and great tradesmen and nurses and whatever else. And before that school opened, kids often didn't even go to grade 12. They'd go to work at Richmond Fisheries.
That's right,
Work on
exactly.
trawlers, work on lake
Right,
boats.
that's
Right.
And that totally changed the landscape.
Yeah.
And I have to say that's a very positive side to it, but there's a negative side to it as well. What ended up, we graduated students who went on to study university and vocational schools, community college, nursing schools, and most of those people, when they graduated, could not find employment on Almadam.
Yeah, of course not.
So what did they do?
Yeah.
They ended up going somewhere else, get married, raise families.
Yeah.
Halifax, the school system, if all the Richmond County born people were to leave the Halifax system,
Exactly.
it would be in difficulty. Their French program would probably be destroyed.
That's right,
Yeah.
exactly.
And like I said, we have all kinds of people who became engineers,
Yeah.
and in order to find work, I have sons who all live in Ontario.
Yeah.
And why in Ontario? Because there was employment.
Yeah.
If I had a young family now, some would go to Ontario, the rest would probably go out in BC or Alberta.
Yeah.
And the population, to give you an idea, when I became vice principal of the high school in 77, 78, I believe it was, we reached a peak. We had 849 students at IMDH. I was the principal that closed it in 2000. We were down to exactly 349, a loss of 500.
Yeah, yeah. That's
And
amazing.
recently, I've decided to look at the county in general. And Don Boudreau had an article as well in the Reporter recently. In 63, 64, when Almadam and St. Peter's High School opened, there were 3,245 students
Yeah.
in Richmond County,
Yeah.
25 schools. In the probably early 90s, that number was reduced to 11 schools.
Yeah.
Now there are a total of 5 schools in Richmond County. École Beauport in
Yeah.
Ayrshire, Felix Marchand in Lewisdale, Richmond
Yeah.
Education Center Academy in Lewisdale, East Richmond in St. Peters, and the school in Chapel Island.
That's right.
This morning I decided, well, what if I'm asked a question on how things have changed? I did not get the information I was seeking from Chapel Island. They were going to call back, but maybe they call since I'm here. But in any case, the 4 other schools together only have 945 students, 2,300 fewer students than in 1963.
Oh, yeah.
That's
of course.
amazing.
Honestly.
Truly amazing.
Truly amazing.
It's amazing.
And
amazing, yeah.
I say Almadam prepared people for the modern world, but what we did in the process
We
is
exported
help.
them.
We fish used to be our big export,
Exactly.
but in time it became
People.
Yeah.
Yeah.
educated people.
Earl, you wanted to.
Well, I was just thinking, we're talking about people traveling out, but you go to Alberta, for example, there's a flood of X-rings you'll see out there when you travel
Yeah.
around there, and sure, throughout the West.
Oh my God, you
United
see the
States.
X-ring everywhere.
They're all over the world,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's for sure.
I mean, I think it's been. I do a fair amount of research for the Historical Society, and I was sort of astounded. I was reading a master's thesis that was written many years ago about fishing and population trends on Almadam. Do you know in the 1870s? I mean, if you track the census, right, you can track people's names and you can see people's ages, and then 10 years later you can see if they're still living here, right?
Yeah.
It was up to 2/3 of young people between 1870 and 1880 left the island. So exporting people has always,
Yeah.
it's been a cyclical thing, but it's been a thing, right?
Yeah.
But the educational, I mean, I suppose the one thing we could say about the late 50s and early 60s and onward is that when we exported people who were equipped for a modern economy. Whereas that may not have been as much the case, you know. But it raises a question for me, and that is, when you think about it, what we think the purpose of education has changed a lot. Like Liz, when you were talking about the nuns training you in the loom and stuff, so clearly they were training women to be useful, productive housewives. But and Dave, when you were going to school, I mean, obviously they were training people to be, among other things, literate about the world and literate about science.
Yeah.
Earl, when you were young, and then maybe when you were older, I mean, what was the function of education, and do you think?
Well, the thing is, let me take it back a step back a bit more than that. Like, in my grandfather's day, and then and then in his children's day, like my father, they went away to Gloucester and Montauk,
Yeah.
and they went on sailing vessels, salt bankers like the Blue Nose, and they made money, and then they came home, and they did something useful with the money. It was interesting to look at how they operated. Like my grandfather had 8 children, but he had a whole workforce he left behind. He went, did this work, came back, he bought a car, one of the fewest around, he bought a new mowing machine, he had nice horses with fine harness, all this stuff, but he was able to do that, and everything that we left behind was all looked after. The hay was made, the farming, the vegetables and everything was all secured,
planted, yeah.
all done, all this was done, and this was acceptable. Now, when my turn came, in 1957, when I finished high school here, the whole idea where to go was on the lake boats. That was the thing to do, because you could make, we thought was good money, because when you went on the boat, you had a place, you had board and room, and you could save the money if you wanted to. Lots of people didn't, but you could if you wanted to, and then you could do something useful with the money, and that was the trend to do, So, but Cape Breton, and Isle Madame was a place where people left to go away, and retired and came back.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
You
Right,
couldn't
right.
take
That
the
was
Cape
your
Breton-
experience
You
too.
couldn't take the Cape Bretoner out of it.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
couldn't do it.
Yeah, you could take the Cape
Right.
Breton out of Cape Breton.
When
but
I
you
was
couldn't
living-
take Cape Breton out of the Cape Breton.
When I was living in the Annapolis Valley, it's a wonderful place to live. Lovely people and all that kind of thing, and the amenities are far greater, but the thing is, I miss the water.
Right.
The high tides going down 30 feet, just down the street from where I lived, didn't impress me. It was a big mud hole.
Well, when I left home to go to the seminary in the States, we were in the Adirondack Mountains, and I was from the ocean here. I almost died.
Right.
I was choking half the time.
Yeah,
Liz.
when I left grade 11, the things that I should have been learning would have been typing and get on for an office job. I went to Halifax. I ended up being a waitress, but at night I used to go to this right down below Citadel Hill.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'd walk there from work. I worked for the Air Force at the time as a waitress, and it was a very good job. I was offered a lot of different good jobs, but I didn't have typing and office procedures and all that. I got that after at that time, but I was working for the Air Force, and but I was offered a couple of the commanders or people that was high in the
In the Navy.
in the
Air
Air Force.
Force, sorry.
It was the Air Force was oh God, I can't.
But
Lost
they,
my
off-
job.
but they offered you opportunities.
They offered
ideas
me
and
opportunities
Yeah.
to even pay for my education.
Oh, wow.
Because they liked me.
Yeah.
Right.
And they wanted me to. One man, he and his wife offered me to move to Ottawa
Oh, God. Yeah.
and put me through all that
Yeah.
So this
kind of education.
So the education that you needed to participate in a modern economy
Yeah.
is something that you got after you
After
left.
when
Yeah.
I did it myself and I had to pay for all that work that should have been offered to me when I was
Yeah.
young.
Student, yeah, and
Yeah.
younger.
So you got an education that
on my own. Yeah.
wasn't much good for you
Yeah.
unless you were preparing to marry a man, have 8 kids, and look after the house.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, talking about people in the sea, and I come from a family. My dad, there were 7 boys in Dad's family. 6 of them were master mariners. My generation, 2 of us did it a little bit, but we left it behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One generation went from I could go multi-generations and there were always seafarers.
Yeah,
My generation was the first one to,
yeah.
and I have to say my dad did everything to discourage me from even working on lake boats.
Yeah.
From
Yeah.
Well, it was
April
like my
to
father.
September.
My father worked at the fish plant for years and years and years. He did not want me to work at the fish plant.
Yeah.
Even for a summer job or a part-time job, he said, no, you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
He said, I don't want you there doing that kind of work.
Now, did your parents make the connection between education and having more opportunity to do other things than they had done, or was there no like?
Mine did for sure.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Dad,
Yeah.
well, first of all, he said it's no life.
that's right.
And number one, the money was good. And he always said, if you want to do something with your life and live a normal family
Yeah,
life,
that's
if you
right.
end up being married and having a family,
Yeah, yeah.
being on the ocean is not the way to go. And he said, but education is a way to make it happen. And I remember him saying, as long as you're studying, whether it's university or even postgraduate, I will help finance
Yeah.
your studies. But the day you say, I'm no longer going to school, you're on your own.
You're on
Yeah,
You're on your
that's
own.
right,
Yeah.
that's
You
right.
know, my mother had a similar thing, you know, she believed in an education, but the thing is, she say, as long as you're going to school and passing the courses, you're fine here. But when that's over, or you leave, you're gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I had in my mind to do, and that's what I did do. You know. My mother was widowed, you know, I was the oldest, I was 4 years older than my next brother, you know, so that was the way to go.
Well, I
Yeah.
think we've said a lot about.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I found some of the things I've learned today quite interesting. Any final words on your experience of education in Richmond County, or something you might want people to take away, or something you've taken away from?
Well,
Think about
what I've done, I tried to get more education on my own. I mean, I went to school, there's classes that they had, everybody. In fact, I have a book that we wrote in DeCoste. There's a book that we wrote. Everybody that was going to that class, it was a,
Doris LeBlanc had an article in that book.
right,
Yeah, I would-
right. I have an article in that book.
Okay.
And my article is all about, it was what you did. And I was an only child. My father had no sons, and he was fishing. And, you know, it's, every time I think about it, the tears come to my eyes. I used, my uncle, Henry, who had 5 or 6 children, they couldn't get any of the kids, especially the girls. They were fishermen, and they didn't have any sons that would help them. I used to go down the shore, and in those days they had puncheons.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Molasses puncheon.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
Or
know
for
what
fish,
it was.
or they used to put pickled fish in them too.
Yeah, they pick up fish. That's what I had to do. What they did is they hauled me up. I could get into the puncheon easy because I was only tiny. And to pack the fish, I knew how to do that very well. They used to drop me off in the puncheon.
Wow.
And when I start packing the fish until it.
Well, Liz, you've come a long way since then.
Oh yeah, I'm
Like
telling you, I did everything.
You did
You
everything.
used to cut wood and
Yeah.
you know, I was just good
Well, and
with an axe.
What I find remarkable about what you've told us is, is this notion that arriving in Halifax and serving as a waitress,
Yeah,
but also understanding that to do the things you wanted to do, you needed to learn new skills, and you did.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
took it all.
I
on
was
and you did it.
always going to school or to classes. I used to take up classes
Yeah.
of typing and officer. I even worked for lawyers
Yeah.
and then I ended up working for the courts. trials and everything.
So education, you know, despite the deficiencies of what you
Yeah.
experienced on Ile Madame, you rectified that as you
Yeah.
went on and
Yeah.
just kept building on your
Yeah.
educational base.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, these guys went off to university.
Yeah,
Yes, but not to discredit the thing entirely. The thing is, I want to get back to the rural one-room school. Some great things were done there in the one-room school, and some great people, you know, with tremendous abilities that went forth in the world beyond. And it was, you know, because they pushed themselves to do it or had a desire to do it, whatever, you know. And that's why I'm so partial to that kind of thing. But it's only a memory. I wouldn't want to go
Yeah.
back to that.
No,
Yeah.
no, no.
Yeah.
But it's only a memory.
Well, or what
But
you're
that-
suggesting.
that worked for the time being, and some good qualified people, you know, in different fields come out of that kind of
Well,
thing.
what you're inviting us to do, I think, is to remember that while there were limitations to the
Yes.
one-room school system, they had some virtues.
Yeah, they had their
yeah.
purpose.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just reminded. I remember telling my mother, you know, because I saw my father fish in a stemmer, a rowboat, with 85 lobster traps off the shore, and then you'd have to haul this thing up on the shore, you know, after, because there was no harbor in Rocky Bay. You couldn't keep a motorboat
Yeah.
there,
Right.
because if there was a storm coming, you had to move it to Pondville Brook
Yeah.
or to Puryearville or something like that, you know. So anyway, I told my mother, I said, I will never fish, and I said, I'll never work in a coal mine. But I tell you one thing, if I were younger now, I'd fish lobsters.
Oh, yeah.
We'd be fighting
Right.
to get the license.
Yeah. While, in those days,
My
right?
father had a license, and I remember going and working, putting lobster traps out on the first day with fishermen in Rocky Bay.
Yeah.
They'd pay you $20 for this, and you'd work from daylight
my
till
God.
dark, daylight till
That,
dark to do
that
this.
was a fortune.
That was a fortune, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could buy 2 pairs of jeans for that.
Oh, yeah,
2 pairs of jeans. Yeah.
You won't buy 2 pairs of jeans today.
No,
Yeah.
No. So,
But,
Dave, what
yeah.
about you? And
I
just
feel
final
that
reflections.
being a little younger than the participants here, and I was fortunate in the sense that my educational experience was a bit different.
right.
And I was in multi-graded situations. And like Earl, there were some good things about being in that situation, because if you were, let's say,
was
a
fine.
grade 3 in a combined grade 3, grade 4 class, if you were perhaps a pretty decent student, you would learn stuff from the grade 4
That's right.
when the teacher was concentrating with the grade 4s.
Yeah.
So in some cases, it accelerated our learning.
that's right.
And depending on the numbers, now currently I have 2 grandsons. I have more than 2, but I'll use this example. They're in Toronto, and they're attending a fair-sized school, but the school has a problem in the sense that they have X number of grade 1 students, not enough for 2 classes.
Oh,
So what they do, they have 1 class of grade 1s, and then they might have 1 class half grade 1s with a half class of grade 2s and
Yeah,
a
yeah.
regular grade
yep,
2
split
class.
classes, yeah.
And my daughter-in-law, who is a physician, she's a gastroenterologist, was a bit concerned. And my 2 grandsons are, they're pretty good students, I must say. I said, you know what, it'll accelerate their learning, because they'll pick up what's going on with the
Yeah.
higher grade, and
Yeah, yeah.
every second year
Yeah.
they're by themselves in a homogeneous classroom situation. And she's bought into it now, because she sees that they're learning a lot.
Yeah,
and,
it's working out.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
But-
exactly what happened in the one-room school.
Yeah.
And there were tricks there that the teacher would use. You know, if we get older students listening to the reading that was assigned, they'd go home and they'd practice this, and then the student would, an older student would monitor this and listen to them reading over in one corner, or some quietly, while the teacher was doing something else. And there was all these tricks going on. It was wonderful to watch how this was manipulated, and it all worked.
Yeah.
You know.
And sometimes, if you were a bit stronger student, and you were in the more advanced grade, you might assist some of the younger ones.
Yes,
Who are
exactly.
having challenges.
Yes.
Which in
exactly.
itself is a good learning
Yeah.
opportunity, right?
Yeah,
for-
yeah.
I had
So
that
I
experience.
became a teacher before
You had that
I
I
became
had,
a teacher.
I had that experience in Coal Harbor.
Oh, okay.
Because there was an overflow of I had grade 5, but there was an overflow of grade 4s. So they sent me 10 grade 4 students to be with me.
Yeah.
And so I ended up doing the split class thing, you know, grade 5 and grade 4. But the grade 4s, they did great with it because they were listening to what was going on in the grade 5s and learning, you see, from it. And one little fella, he was just as pleased as Punch.
Yeah.
He was, but he was very smart too, you know.
But getting back, if you permit me, the situation that we lived, not as long as you guys did, but for quite a while, where you had multi-grade classrooms, I'd say it was easier for everyone, including the teacher, in those days than it is currently.
Oh, yes,
Because you have so many issues in the school
that's right.
that
Yeah.
originate in the home, but they're brought to school. There's
Society's
scary
in-
rise in autism, and these students are now integrated.
Yeah.
God bless teachers, they have
Yeah.
one wicked assignment.
Oh my God.
You
I wouldn't wanna
have
be
kids
teaching
who
today.
are disciplined, have lack of discipline, I must say, and you have to deal with all of that. It's tough enough in a one grade classroom, but to
What teachers
multi-
are expected to do today.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's-
yeah.
Oh my God, it's unreal. It's
It
unreal.
is
I'll
kind of
give you
unreal.
an example. My first year teaching, 68, I was teaching history to 2 grade 12 classes. And I was teaching that Modern World Problems program,
Yeah,
and it dealt with the Middle East, which is still an issue.
Yeah.
And it dealt with
we'll continue.
apartheid in
Yeah,
South
yeah.
Africa.
Oh my God, yes.
that.
The invasion of Czechoslovakia by the Russians, and all these issues, some of them which are very much issues to this very day. Ireland was one of the
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
we studied.
Oh my God, yes.
But in
Cuba,
any
Cuba.
case,
See, I've not
the first
studied
time
any of
I
that stuff.
gave
Yeah.
a test or a quiz to my class, I handed out a test paper to the entire class. I might have had 32 students in one particular grade 12 class. I found out that 6 of those kids weren't even taking the course. But they were there when I was
Yeah.
teaching it to the rest of the
Yeah.
students.
Yeah.
And because they followed,
And they were interested.
would ask questions at times.
Yeah, yeah.
And I meet these people today, and they look at what goes on in the Middle East,
Yeah.
and they say, "Look, Mr. Forgeron, I can still remember having you in grade 12, and you were talking about the Balfour Report
Yeah.
and everything that transpired in the Middle East, and everything you taught us still applies today, and the problem has not been resolved."
No.
So that shows you the difference in times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any final reflections for us, Father, on what we've talked about today?
No, it's I find it very interesting
Yeah.
because it's kind of a recap, you know, because I'm back here and I have all this experience behind me, and it's refreshing.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I found it fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's so
I mean,
fascinating.
I've learned some
to-
things I didn't. I
and the
didn't
different
know.
experiences
Yeah.
that you have, and I think it's special.
Well, I also want to say that I know all 4 of you, different levels, but it's deepened my understanding of who you are as people,
Yeah.
and I feel privileged to know
Well,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
You're very welcome. I
It's
ended
been
up
fun.
being principal of Almaden for 14 years.
Holy smokes!
The longest serving principal, and the first principal was Mike McNeil,
Oh, yes.
and he was there for 7 years.
That's right. Well, he's the one that gave me permission to get grade 4.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
he was the what they call supervising principal.
Yeah,
There was
that's
an
right.
issue between
Yeah.
mainland and
Yeah,
Almaden,
yeah,
Lewisdale, and the principal Hawley was supervising principal in that part.
Yeah.
Eventually, they had one superintendent for the system. But in any case, when I went into grade 12, I ended up being student council president. And when I was at university, Mr. McNeil got sick, and we went in to visit him at St. Martha's. And I remember he said, "Are you still going to be a lawyer?" I said, "I'm thinking about it." He said, "No, you're going to become a teacher." And then we were a group of
Yeah.
former students, and he says, "You're going to become a teacher." He points at me and he says, "Someday you'll be the principal of that high school."
There you go.
And it all came
Yeah.
true.
There you go.
14
I never
years
said
ago.
that.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
I want to thank you all for coming. It's been a real pleasure for me.
Yeah.
I hope it's been a pleasure for you.
Yeah.
And I hope we
Well,
invite
it
you
was.
again. You might come.
Oh yeah.
Would
Next
ya?
time. Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Why not?
Why not?